really want to welcome you to Coffee Talk, an event designed to elevate the voices of the descendants of Texas's more than 550 freedom colonies. These descendant communities are really the reason why we do what we do. What we're doing now is going to begin to give you an idea of what it might have been like right after emancipation was announced on June 19th, 1865, and shortly thereafter. Please note that the reason we're even talking about Black land and freedom colonies is because it was so essential, Black land accumulation, to the beginning of these important places. How important? Understand that in 1870, less than 2% of all farmland in Texas was owned by African Americans. By 1910, African Americans owned some 31%. And we're significantly below 31% or even 2% now in Texas and around the country. But we'll get into the specifics of what land loss and accumulation looks like today and why with some of our guests. We are going to have an exciting program for you today in which we hope you learn, you share, and you feel inspired to do something to support your own freedom colony and those of freedom colonies in Texas and frankly, around the United States. Freedom colonies are historic African-American settlements founded between 1865 and 1930 roughly in Texas, but they're known by a lot of different names. Historic Black settlements, Black towns, freedmen's settlements, freedmen's towns, but they're all historic African-American settlements intentionally founded to produce safety and to pursue intentional community building and to pursue liberation and freedom. I want to now hand it over to one of our doctoral students, Miss Skylar Carter. Skylar?
Hello, thank you, Dr. Roberts. Again, I want to welcome you all for being here for our special Juneteenth Coffee Talk today. This is a very special holiday, especially for those of us here in Texas. The origins of Juneteenth date back to 1865 and the first celebration, organized celebration of Juneteenth in the origins beginning in Galveston area when General Gordon Granger made the announcement years after President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. But we have a long story history and exciting events that we have happening all across Texas that follow the traditions that our ancestors began years ago in celebrating the freedom, their freedom, and the freedom of us and their descendants and generations to come. So we have a list of events that are going on, and we have one of our special partners, Sam Collins, and the Galveston area. They have recently established a mural, a Juneteenth mural. And so there's going to be a dedication to that mural and different festivities going on. And so that is on Saturday. But you can visit our website, our new website, to see the list of events, or our social media pages, Facebook and Instagram, and where we're sharing those different projects, those different celebrations and events. Today's program, we're going to be talking about Black land and the future of freedom colonies. This topic is really a really necessary and on-time topic for many families across not only Texas, but the entire country. But we'll be going over an introduction of Black land and different things like that. Then we'll go into a Black land policy discussion, an interview with Erica McDonald. And then we'll move on to a Black land and family, specifically in Jake's Colony, where we'll talk to descendants Lola and Malcolm Moore about their family's history in Jake's Colony and the surrounding area. And then we'll move on to announcements and news from the project, and then also how you guys can get involved with the project and any Q&As with our guests today. So that is the order of events, and we look forward to you sticking around with us.
Thank you, Skylar. In this next segment, we're going to talk about Black land and Black farmers, legal information, and helpful resources. A disclaimer, the information in this presentation is provided solely for general informational and educational purposes, and it is not intended to constitute nor substitute legal advice, nor should it be construed as an offer to perform future legal services. If you think you need legal advice, please consult a state licensed attorney in your area. Additionally, to the degree this presentation and concomitant materials include links and other information regarding third-party websites, such information is offered for the user's convenience and does not constitute an endorsement by the Texas Freedom Colonies Project.
One of the first reactions that a lot of folks have when they come to a farm is, a Black person will think of slavery. There's really no way that your ancestors can go through hundreds of years of enslavement and tenant farming and being ripped off their land by racist violence and not have this visceral reaction to the earth because the land really was the scene of the crime. We had these autonomous, beautiful relationships with land before, and that's something we can reclaim and get connected to.
Black farmers have historically been missing from narratives about farm life.
There ain't nobody gonna push me off my land.
From Hollywood films,
if you build it, he will come,
to PSAs in the 2000s.
Farmers were our foundation. They're the ones who made us strong.
But Black farmers have always been here. In spite of the broken promise of 40 acres and a mule, Black farmers made up a sizable 14% of the farming population in the 1920s. Fast forward to the 80s, when they were said to be on the brink of extinction. Then in 2012, the agriculture census showed a rise in Black farmers. But a new food economy investigation earlier this year disputed the increase, saying it reflected changes in methodology, not reality. One thing is certain, there's been a rapid decline in the number of Black farmers over the past century, and there's no shortage of reasons why. Widespread USDA discrimination against Black farmers who needed loans and assistance, as well as Black land taken or lost through force, local corruption, and fractured land titles all played a role. Now, with the case for reparations gaining traction in Congress and among Democratic presidential candidates, the history of Black farmers and land loss is receiving new interest.
Come on, kiddies. Y'all want some to eat?
The family of Ernest Vines, a retired auto mechanic and former farmer, is among the many Black families in the rural South who have lost land.
This house right here, this was my great-granddaddy and his wife. And this is where I was born at. I was born right there. I was born in 1947.
In the early 1900s, the Vines family purchased roughly 50 acres of land.
This deed was made on the 5th day of February, 1906. Usda Vine was my granddaddy, and they purchased this land from the Dawson, and they approached it for $750.
They first started losing property in the late 1930s, when a white neighbor claimed 14 acres of their land. Vines' father tried to fight it in court.
This is my father right here, and everybody say he favored me. But I know my father started going back to court in the 30s because of the land had been taken away from him. And so my oldest brother, he would tell me my father would go up to the courthouse and come back with tears in his eyes, saying what people done and how they could do things, and get away with it. And he died unhappy with a heart attack. And I believe that's what really put a lot of stress on him.
Over the span of 70 years, both him and his father dealt with land disputes that cost the family half their property.
He went to Holy Hill, and he's not the only one in this area that happened to him. A lot of people ain't here to tell this. People might not think this is not real, but it is real. It was a color code thing. And that's why a lot of Black farmers couldn't make it. And that's why a lot of them left and went to the city, because it was not fair what they were trying to do.
Unable to get a farmer's loan and keep up with court fees, Vines took a step back from farming in the early 1980s. Several years ago, him and his wife found a way to keep the land in use.
We donated to the church, and they're training young generation how to farm and how to grow different things. I thank God that I fight it and didn't let my father, and didn't let my mother, didn't let nobody down, didn't let God down. I think I did enough out here, so let some younger generation, young crowd go out there and do what I used to try to do. Yeah.
The average age of American farmers is rising, but some Black farming organizations are seeing a new generation of growers emerge. 26-year-old Kendrick Ransom is one of them. He runs an organic vegetable farm on family land, less than 15 miles from the Vines property.
I don't know many Black farmers around here, especially not young farmers. I do have a couple elder farmers that come out to the farm and help me, give me some tips every now and then.
Back in 1925, Black farmers in Edgecombe County outnumbered white farmers. But by 2017, the number of Black farmers dropped by 99%.
Where y'all at? Ready for breakfast? When people think of a farmer, I believe they think of a poor peasant, someone that's uneducated, just of the land, just likes to get dirty. I don't really think people really grasp the significance of farming and the role of the farmer. What's up? You sleep good? I got into a bunch of trouble when I was younger, and I started driving dump trucks, and I started breeding dogs, and then later on became the agriculture piece. That was more so like an awakening for me, it was more so of a calling. I got a lot of weird reactions. Folks just couldn't wrap their minds around it, and it was just like, farming? This guy wants to be a farmer? You was in the bathroom, baby. What's taking y'all so long? Come on. Yeah, it was very, very challenging times when we first got going out here. Come on, push the wagon, come on. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Didn't really have much to work with, had nothing at all, really. We got hoes, shovels, rakes. So that's pretty much it.
Why you do that?
Cause you taking too long.
I got a big giant one.
Oh, you did? It's very important that we learn how to survive and learn how to make use for what we got. Instead of just waiting around for grants or somebody to donate me or waiting on a handout, we make it work. I've never thought about taking out a loan. That's just something that I've been taught. My big brother told me stay away from loans. I'm familiar with the issues that Black farmers face when they did take out loans and they were unable to pay them back. You lose everything you got, and that's including your farm and your land for your family.
Thank you for this land, thank you for this land, this healing, this healing, this healing land, this healing, this healing, this healing land. Hey, Jaga, good morning. Good morning, honey. I am the granddaughter of Brownie Lee McCullough, who was displaced from her land in Rock Hill, South Carolina as a child of the Great Migration. I am the granddaughter of Samuel Cornelius Smith, who was displaced from his land, fleeing from abuses of government in Haiti, and was fortunate enough to be the first returning generation of the grandchildren to find land again.
Over a decade ago, Leah Penniman and her husband bought 72 acres in rural Grafton to start Soulfire Farm, a community and teaching farm.
While some folks will call it Trump country, this is actually Mohican country. This is Native territory, and it also has a long history being Black land as well. Harriet Tubman built her farm not too far from here, as well as the Timbuktu Black community and Rap Road Black community. So it's not that we don't belong here, but we are definitely reclaiming space after many generations of being forced off of this land.
Last year, more than 1,000 urban and rural growers of color attended workshops at Soulfire on everything from organic gardening to food justice. Soulfire also launched what it calls a Reparations Map, where people with the means can locate farmers of color to donate to.
The Reparations Map is a people-to-people land and resource redistribution project that matches up Black and brown farmers to folks with privilege who want to support their projects. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 1, 2, About 70. Okay, so we have currently around 70 entries into the reparations map. We do a lot of uprooting racism trainings for white-led organizations and in white spaces, and the reparations map is one of those what you can do kind of things that most people have the ability to engage with at least at some level. These projects have received anything from, a few $1,000s to an entire parcel of land for their project so that they could go forward with their plans to feed the community. We're situating it as a remedy, one remedy to the long legacy of land theft and dispossession. I think when you frame it as charity or a fund, you're leaning into this idea of the worthy and benevolent donor doing the right thing for the community. But this is really about justice and fairness and correcting a past harm. Come on, Chaga. Come on.
Black land laws and Black farmers' legal information will be presented with me interviewing Erica McDonald, who is the legal researcher for the Texas Freedom Colonies project. She's a Juris Doctor and a Master of Laws, and is the most knowledgeable person that I know when it comes to land loss prevention and reparations. Unfortunately, Mr. Vine's story is one too familiar for many Black landowners and farmers. After the Civil War, freed Black slaves overcame the broken promises of 40 acres and mule, and using their own knowledge of the land and agricultural skills, they amassed more than 14 million acres of farmland with virtually no help from the government. Today, Black farmers own less than 2 million acres. During the same period, white farm ownership has increased more than 60%. So joining us today, Erica will explore in the next few minutes the role of the law in this massive wealth redistribution. Erica, can you identify and discuss the legal causes of Black farmland loss over the past half century?
Absolutely. So first, thank you for having me. I'm humbled and thrilled to be here celebrating Juneteenth with you, and thank you for the work that Texas Freedom Colonies is doing. So what I'm going to talk about today in terms of Black farmland loss, there are two general areas that I want to focus on. The first involves state property law, and the second involves federal agricultural policy. So first, let's talk about state law, because this is the heirs property issue that a lot of you might have heard about. What is heirs property? Heirs property occurs when you own land and then someone dies without a will. What happens is that point with no will, the property passes down to that person's heirs through the default rules of state law. This is usually a spouse or a child. And the problem with that is there's no legal documentation, no deed, no piece of paper that says I own this land. And then this problem gets magnified over successive generations because we have one generation after another. And soon that piece of land that was owned by one person is now owned by 10 or 20 or 50. We've seen over 100 people owning one small parcel of land. What this creates is a very tenuous type of legal ownership that's called tenancy in common. This is just the legal name for it, but what it means is exactly what I described. A lot of people who have a stake in the land and believe that they own it, but no documentation to prove it. And the reason it is so unstable is that any one of those persons in the successive generations, if they decide to sell their interest in the land, they can actually go to court and force the sale of the entire property. And what often ends up happening is that the entire property is sold at auction to a price well below market value, and a lot of times not by the people actually living on and using the land. Now, there have been some changes to state law through the Uniform Heirs Property Act that's been passed by a number of states, including Texas. So we're seeing some changes, but it's going to take a long time for the courts to catch up with that.
Thank you, Erica. You also mentioned federal agriculture policy. So Why is farmland, which is supposed to be federally regulated by the USDA, even subject to state property laws? What's the role of the USDA in all of this?
Well, that's a great question, and it brings me directly to my next point. The unfortunate answer is that the Department of Agriculture, remember, whose job it is to protect farmers and farmland, unfortunately played a major contributing role in the decline of Black farmers. They've essentially overseen this massive, I would call it nothing short of a wealth redistribution predicated on race that saw Black farmers decline by 98% at the same time that white farm ownership increased by 67%. So how did that happen? Primarily, the biggest culprit is discriminatory lending process. But this goes all the way back to segregation. There's been segregation in the USDA agencies for decades. And once de jure or intentional segregation ended, later than you might think, way later than the Civil Rights era, all the way up into the 70s and 80s, we still had discriminatory lending processes. And what was happening is that, as some of you may know, especially if you're a farmer, the agricultural industry survives on credit. Sometimes a government check is the only thing keeping you from one planting season to the next. And so if you go to USDA and apply for a loan for your seeds or your fertilizer, if you need a new tractor and you don't get it, it's almost like they might as well just be taking away your farm. And unfortunately, that's what's happened. We've seen millions of acres of Black farmland lost through foreclosure. And the loan applications by Black farmers are denied at something like 2.5 times the rate of white farmers. Part of the reason is that even though the USDA is a federal agency, the folks making the decision about those loan applications are the county agents. And so a lot of the sort of cronyism that developed during Jim Crow and sort of white farmers looking out for each other and even looking out for land that wasn't theirs that they could get their hands on, those practices are well entrenched, and they've unfortunately continued into modern times. There was also a great deal of corruption in the Civil Rights Division. There were supposed to be folks looking out for this, overseeing the desegregation of the local agencies. And unfortunately, we found all the way through the current Secretary of Agriculture, who was the same Secretary of Agriculture during the Obama administration, that's Tom Vilsack, thousands upon thousands of civil rights complaints simply thrown into the trash right along with those loan applications.
Wow. So given the substantial role of the law in the decline of Black farmland, what can the law do now? What can lawmakers do in terms of restoring justice?
So here's where we get into a little bit of my opinion, but my opinion based on my research is that the only just solution to this is nothing short of one-to-one reparations. And what I mean by that is if you applied for a loan at USDA or one of their lending agencies and you were denied unjustly, and that resulted in a foreclosure, if you lost 5 acres, then you need to get 5 acres back. People should be given their land back on a one-to-one basis. But I also think a point needs to be made about re-educating folks just in the general populace around this myth of the Great Migration, and that, after the emancipation, Black farmers tried to work on the land, but they just couldn't make a go of it. And then you had the Great Depression and the boll weevil, and Black folks all migrated north en masse to pursue economic opportunities, is what they always say. But cities during the Industrial Revolution were not exactly beacons of hope and economic opportunity. And what happened was a lot of this was forced migration. Land was stolen, and that's something that America needs to reckon with.
Thank you, Erica. Despite of this grim context, is there any legislation in the horizon that is promising, that is moving us towards the right direction?
Yes, as a matter of fact. So there are 3 pieces of federal legislation that I want to focus on. Now, the first was passed in 2018 as part of the 2018 Farm Bill. And if you're looking at the first slide there, that's the Fair Access for Farmers and Ranchers Act. And what it did was it created a $10 million federal appropriation for credit assistance for, unfortunately, they weren't explicit about Black farmers. They use the term socially disadvantaged farmers, but that does include Black farmers. It also expanded eligibility for owners and operators of farms to obtain a farm number. A farm number is how you apply for a loan, how you get any kind of federal assistance. And this is important because you remember that heirs property issue we were talking about. What it did was it allowed people to get that farm number, even if you don't have clear title or a deed, a piece of paper to show you own the land. Now on that slide, you can see we have a list of eligible documents. If you are in a state that has Heirs Property Act or one that hasn't passed it, again in Texas we have, but you can also get more information. There's a link below on the slide, or you can go to the Texas Freedom Colonies Black Land Resources webpage, and we'll have that link posted up there as well, I understand. If we can move on to the next slide. The more recent piece of legislation was passed just back in February. It was the Emergency Relief for Farmers of Color Act. This was part of the 2019 COVID-19 stimulus package. And it appropriated $5 billion in aid, again, to socially disadvantaged farmers, which includes Black farmers. This is for debt relief, grants. There's a little bit of information on this slide to let you know what constitutes an eligible borrower and which loans. There's a time period for which loans are eligible. But again, there's more detailed information on the USDA website. We'll link to that here in the slide and on the Black Land Resources side on the webpage. But I do want to caution, there's a recent development and there's federal litigation that is holding up the funding. So a judge in Wisconsin issued a temporary restraining order. Some white farmers have sued over this, claiming it's unconstitutional. And so we're going to see what happens with that. There's actually an emergency meeting tomorrow night of some advocacy groups I'll be attending. I'll report back to Texas Freedom Colonies and let you know what happens with that lawsuit. So please, check back with Texas Freedom Colonies. So finally, if we can move on to the last slide.
Thank you, Erica. Just a quick follow-up question regarding this act and the previous act. You mentioned that there's a halt in the funding. So what does that translate for people who are going in and subscribing and putting in all their information? Is this a waste of time? Is this just names in the system, or is it productive to go in and get that documented?
It is not a waste of time. Thank you for reminding me. So the funding that I talked about, that $10 million every year, that was never, the appropriations bill was never passed. So the money isn't there. However, there are funds at USDA for women farmers, farmers of color, and farmers who are just starting out. We've provided a link to that page on the Texas Freedom Colonies website. And the reason that it's not a waste of time to go ahead and apply is because, again, as I mentioned, you can get that farm number. If you go on and take a look at the website, see if you're eligible, ask us if you have any questions, but getting that farm number is going to be really important, whether you're actually granted a loan or not. And so finally, on this last slide, I want to talk about a new bill. It was just presented in the Senate and one in the House. It was sponsored by Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey. It's the Justice for Black Farmers Act, and this is a really exciting bill. Again, this isn't what I would call legal reparations, but it comes closer to anything we've ever seen than real, to real justice for Black farmers. And it's actually land grants, 32 million acres of land that the federal government will be purchasing and then giving to Black farmers at no charge to the farmers. There are also plans for civil rights reforms to deal with some of those issues we were talking about earlier, funds for nonprofit organizations like this one, to help resolve heirs property issues, and funding for scholarships for historically Black colleges and universities and land grant colleges to promote scholarships in agriculture education and pursuing agricultural careers. We have a full summary of that at our website, and the link is there. And so that's going to be an exciting bill to watch. It's not perfect, so we also have a link to some criticism and some really thought-provoking issues to take a look at as we watch this bill move and we talk about, actually obtaining some measure of justice for farmers who've lost their land.
Thank you so much, Erica. Now, in the absence of some government aid, what do you recommend for anyone who is watching that owns farmland or wants to own farmland to protect themselves from some of the pitfalls that we've discussed here today?
Yes, so definitely the first thing that you're going to want to do, and it's really important, is to get in contact with your local county agent. Find out, go to some of the resources that we've provided and get that farm number, because that farm number is going to be how you apply for any kind of assistance. You can do a title search, a deed search on your land to make sure that there aren't any issues with clouded title. And by this, I mean, it could be that you owe taxes or you have an unpaid mortgage, or even if somebody did work on your farm and they say that you owe them money, that could be an encumbrance on the land that you want to try to steer clear of. Now, even if there are issues with your deed or with your title, or you can't find one, again, you can still obtain a farm number. So follow the resources on our page to get that. And finally, most importantly, if you feel that you've been discriminated against by USDA, file a complaint with the Civil Rights Office. There are some problems, as we've discussed. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be arduous. It won't be easy, but keep documentation of everything that you have, because even if that complaint goes nowhere with the agency, the only way a court will help you is if you had that documentation. So at the end of the day, it's on us to make sure that USDA is working for us, because, well, that's their job.
Thank you so much, Erica. I see we have a lot of comments and a lot of questions. I want you to know that we will address all your questions and all your comments at the end of the coffee talk. Everything is going to be responded. Now, every single link and every single resources and everything that Erica just shared with us is available in our Blackland resources page in the TexasFreedomColoniesProject.com website. You may scan this QR code in order to access the website, or you can go to the link below. I am going to show you real quick over here our website, so you can have an idea of what kind of resources you're going to find there. And I'm going to share it with you right now. I'm opening it over here.
While she's pulling that up, I do want to mention to everyone that Texas A&M is significant in that we have on our law faculty, Mr. Thomas Mitchell. Some of you may be familiar with his work. Erica referenced the Uniform Code. And so he's someone that we look to for some guidance and support and information, and hopefully we'll have him on future shows. He would have liked to have been here today, but as you know, he's a recipient of the Genius Grant, which makes it keeps him quite busy. And he is in the process of developing a center institute to work on these issues. So with that, I want to pass it back over to Valentina so that she can explicitly show just the section about Black land.
Thank you so much, Dr. Roberts. If you go to our homepage, under the resource tab, you will find the subtab of Black land resources. So in our Black land resources, you will find some frequently asked question tabs where you can find links to the places that will be helpful for you to navigate that Erica was mentioning. As you can see, we have, what do I do if I think the US discriminates against me, which is the link for filing a complaint. You can find it here as well. We have a summary of all the bills, as well as links to the full pages of the bills where you can find the full text. We have some little summaries that you can share on your social media about some of the acts, like the Justice for Black Farmers Act, as well as the links to the full text and a comprehensive summary of the Justice for Black Farmers Act as well that you can navigate through. And that's just some of the things that we have up to now. Of course, after Erica goes to her meeting tomorrow, and as we move forward with more information, we will be updating this page with every resource available that we might find that's going to be helpful for Black land loss prevention and reparations. And now, with that said, I am going to pass it to Skylar, who will start an interview with Mr. and Mrs. Moore.
Well, actually, I will thank you, Valentina. Dr. Roberts and I will be talking with some very special descendants. So, Dr. Roberts, I'll let you take it over before we get started.
Sure. If you want to stop share and yeah, there you go. Perfect. That's fine. Before we get into that, I do want to take a breath and acknowledge and sit with what we just heard. So we heard a lot of information, but the wisdom and the knowledge we should have gained is that this issue of land retention and loss is important to the Black freedom struggle. It always has been, and it still is. That these problems are rooted in systemic discrimination in American society, and that the struggle continues and is not over. Just because we have legislation doesn't mean people try to stop it, knock it down. And so what we're here to do is to educate you and give you tools to make decisions and to make educated decisions about about your land. And land is so important to freedom colonies because what happens is if we are not able to see a settlement pattern with the landowners, we can no longer see the boundaries and what constitutes the freedom colony, and then the cultural landscape is gone. So from a historic preservation perspective, it's important. From an economic justice perspective, it's important. From a historical perspective, it's important. So it's really permeates almost everything we do. And so as we go into this conversation about a particular family and their successes and challenges and their origin story, I want you to keep in mind that what we're here to do is not simply say, okay, here's some information, but we really are here to empower you to make decisions, to make choices, and to speak up for yourselves. And with that, I want to welcome these incredible guests that we have here today, Miss Lola Moore and Mr. Malcolm Moore. And with that, I want to welcome them on and each of them to confirm that they are here by each saying hello right now.
Hello.
Hello. Hello. Fantastic.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's
Thank
awesome.
you.
So we have 45 guests who are all listening right now from around the country, who are so excited to hear from you both. And I feel really honored and privileged that you have decided to share your family history and story with us today on our Juneteenth program.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. We're honored to have you. So the way that we want to begin this conversation is to have you please share first, where are each of you calling from now or joining us from now? And if you want to share your videos, we invite you to do so. If you are not comfortable, that's fine too. But I'm sure people would really like to see you.
I am in California.
Great. Okay.
I am currently in Chicago, Illinois, but I will be in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania tonight.
Wow. So this is really this is really significant. So often when I talk to people about freedom colonies and people say, well, how many people still live in the places? If they're not there, then it's over, it's gone, who cares? You know, it's not authentic, it's not real unless you talk to the people who live there right now, full time. And so why do you still, care about this place? If you're in Philly or you're in California, what is so significant about your particular ranch in your family? Why does it matter?
Well, let me start here. We are fifth generation ranchers from our great-great-grandpa Henry, who was born in 1833. And this is like a trippy story for us even, because we've been living it our whole lives. We're born into it. It's not an Ancestry.com story. It is coursing through our veins. I'm presently in California, but my brother actually lives on the land in the house that our great-grandpa built over a century ago.
Wow.
So, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, wow.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing. So the reason that we're connected is because we were chosen. So I believe in spiritual things, and I am very, very clear, and that we are the repairers of the breach. So in our parents' generation, things began to unravel, and there is evidence since me in utero, pretty much, that this is something that we're born to do. So I get to be me. I get to tell their stories. I am a griot, a writer, a sacred storyteller, and literally, I am not kidding when I say I did not make this up and I did not choose it. They chose us specifically and strategically. And when you begin to hear the stories another time in great detail, it'll be crystal clear why and how this is happening. You know, it's pretty amazing.
That's absolutely correct. I mean, I got the same assignment she did. We're just doing different things and, contributing my efforts to repairing the breach, as Lola said, and not making the ranch not only a place that survives but also thrives. Yes. And it's it's something that, just like she said, she got a calling, I got a calling, my cousin calling. Yeah. So we're doing the three things. All three of us are doing different things, but the end result is that the ranch has a raised level of prestige and a continued legacy.
Yeah, that's the biggest piece of this work, is that our job is to ensure that this legacy is here 150 years from now. And I know I'm very clear that our ancestors and the Most High were very, very clear that we have the skill set, the tenacity to pull that off. And not because of something we did, though. Absolutely, this is an incredible honor for us to be chosen to do this work. And it is, I'm not going to kid you, it is crazy amazing. Really, it is. It is absolutely amazing to know that our great-great-grandpa was born in 1833, stolen from his country, brought here against his will, enslaved in Kentucky, and then ended up in Seguin, Texas, in Guadalupe County. And so part of the story goes that in around 1865 that he walked from the middle of town in Seguin to Jake's Colony, which is 12 miles. And here we are. So yeah, it's pretty amazing. And also the founder of Jake's Colony, Jacob Rogers, is a cousin of our great-grandma Tilla, who was the matriarch of this ranch.
Wow.
Yeah. So great-grandpa Henry bought several hundred acres of land in 1870. And we have the deed and all this stuff. So it's 151 years actually right now. So yeah, it's been in our family, consistently thriving in different ways. But as I said, things began to fall apart with our parents' generation for obvious reasons. We shifted from an agricultural community into industrial. We moved out west. My grandma moved to California like in the late 30s, early 40s. But the background is that great-great-grandpa Henry bought this land in 1870. He had our great-grandpa Thomas in 1877. That's my grandmother's father. And great-grandpa Thomas never worked for any man in his whole life, from 1877 to 1941. And so that's pretty amazing in and of itself. And he was able, with my great-grandma Tilla, the matriarch, as I said, was able to expand on what I call this little empire, this ranch to like 900 acres of land by 1941, which is pretty impressive, I must say. Yeah, so that's kind of how we got here.
Yeah. Skylar has some questions for you.
Yeah.
Skylar?
Yes, I was just enjoying the story, of the origin story, really. We talked a little bit about your commitment to the ranch, and what I know, and you said you talked about the challenges, but what is your, again, like, what's your attachment? You being that diasporic citizenship that we're talking about, and you're in California and Chicago. How has COVID? I want to jump back because I know we're still in the middle of the a pandemic.
Yeah,
and so how has COVID affected your travels back to this land that, you know, last year where we would have had Juneteenth and family reunion celebrations and things like that?
Well, for me personally, I'm grounded in California because of COVID, actually, and so I'm not feeling comfortable being back at we call it the big house. Our house on the ranch there is called the big house, and so yeah, I hope to get back there this year. But COVID has definitely impacted that. That's why I'm grounded in California, and so. But the thing is that we've spent most of our lives going to this house. Summers, vacations, etc. And so Malcolm was set up a certain way, even though he'll tell his part, but even though he didn't quite get that information from our ancestors until this year, but he was already set up to do it for his entire life. And so the same thing for me, I didn't recognize until like 5 or 6 years ago that this was something like way crazy. Like, you know, you just kind of in life in general, for all of us, you do what you do, you know what you know, and you have what you have, right? And we take a lot of things for granted, right? But about 5 or 6 years ago, they clearly imparted to me, like, excuse me, you're on an assignment and you've been chosen specifically and strategically, and let us show you why. And so I'm able to go back to, like, in utero, like I said, for proof of how this story is true and how we are restoring. We're living a legacy that we're restoring. And it's like what's weird is that I don't even know what else I would be doing. This is something that I definitely came to the planet to do. I believe that my parents need to come together to have me to do this work, because I believe what it says scripturally, that I knew you before I formed in your mother's womb. I believe that. I am living proof of that. And as I said, these stories are coursing through my veins. I didn't make them up. I didn't create them. It just is.
And I want to give Malcolm a chance to.
So I actually got the assignment probably about 5 or 6 years ago, like Lola did. I accepted it this year. You know, when family comes to you and they say, look, you know, we need you to take care of the stuff, you know, we're going to be gone, we're not going to be able to take care of it, we want you to step in and take care of it. And you're like, what are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. I can't help you. Because you're young and you're not paying attention to this kind of stuff, and it doesn't matter to you because you're trying to do these other things. And then you come later on in life, you come down, and I was actually able to visit the big house in March. And it's definitely different than it was when I was growing up. It's definitely a lot quieter because there aren't very many people there. But I got it this time, and I had a conversation with, you know, in the spiritual realm with the ancestors, and I got it this time, and I understand it, and now I'm on board, and now I'm here to help, and in my special way, just like Lola does in her way, and just like Marlon does in his way.
Right, and I think that's a big point to recognize for those who may not necessarily have this story of magnitude, such as your family in your area, but just everybody finding their niche, everybody contributing, because it's, you know, I always say, like, everybody's not going to do preservation work like Dr. Roberts and myself and many of the folks who are here researching this and studying this, but there's equally enough and more community historians and folks who have been doing this work and who have been putting this effort in. And so, but also we realize those who aren't, you know, those lifelong researchers, that just your part, it's huge, you know, no matter how small you think it is, but everybody plays their significant role. And I think that's something that we can appreciate and pass down, especially to the younger generation, that it does not matter where you're from, but you can really have pride in where you're from and where that can take you, and be proud of that.
That brings up another piece I can sway into this part, that in the entrepreneurial spirit of my ancestors, I created a line of ancestral greeting cards and notebooks. And so one thing that I was doing before COVID hit is, like, in classrooms in California, I'd be able to talk to the children, share their stories, and give to each child in that classroom a notebook and a pen from my collection. because everything that I created depicts my ancestors. So it's my way of like sharing our stories with other people, especially our children, and also imparting to them how important it is for them to begin to write and tell their own stories. Because the thing is, we all have stories, but most of us will not write or tell them. And yes, I understand that what we have is absolutely, it is different. This is uncommon in many ways, because we have the house, we have a cemetery, we have branding irons, we have, you know, plows. I mean, literally, they left us a treasure trove of stuff that we didn't even really quite recognize how incredible this is. But I just believe, like, I have so much respect, and I am so excited and enamored with these people, with great-grandpa Thomas and great-grandma Tilla. Like, they knew exactly who to choose. There's no, I mean, it's crazy wild. I mean, it's so specific and so strategic that it still moves me every time I talk about it, because this is really my life. And so something else that I was thinking too is that our cemetery was, there's 5 generations buried in the cemetery. In our family, both our dads are there, our grandparents are there, great-grandparents are there. And so that's pretty significant. So we were able to work with the Texas Historical Commission at the end of 2019. And right when COVID hit, we got the notice that we are, you know, designated a historical landmark or whatever.
Oh,
and just
congratulations! That is awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, it's huge. And then last month, thank you. And so in May, actually, we completed the application, the narrative for our marker. So I'm completely expecting it to be approved. We will know at the end of July or the beginning of August. And that's a huge deal too for us. And that cemetery story alone is a weird thing. So it's called Ridley Cemetery.
Ridley Cemetery. Well, I wanna jump back to, I know you mentioned you know, the branding irons and yes, also the cemetery. So one of the things that what is your what's working with preserving, whether that's, you know, the photos or ephemera or the cemetery preservation? What, you know, are there any processes or, you know, network connections of maintenance or?
We're in the process of building all that. We're in the process of building all that, and what's working is that we have somebody there who's got boots on the ground, who is taking care of all the stuff on the ground, and that's Marlon. And I have to thank him for that, because that would never be me. I do too much traveling, and now COVID is starting to lessen, and I'm getting more on airplanes, and that's where my lane is. You know, and Lola, you know, she's doing her stuff in California, but she's able to do, you know, she's able to reach out and do all her stuff from wherever she is. And I do the same thing. So I appreciate, you know, that Marlon is there taking care, making sure that, you know, nobody's coming on the ranch and trying to take things and stuff like that.
Right, the cemetery looks nice. It's well maintained. The house is like a museum. It's amazing.
Yeah, you know,
wow. And so you said, you kind of touched on what's next for the ranch and getting those processes together, but it sounds like, you know, the communication amongst descendants is very much, you know, working. It's very much,
we're pretty much
building on to what, you know, and aligning with the goals of the family, it seems. And so
we have some of the elders on board. You know, there are a few that we're talking to, but we're working it out. And that's the major thing, is that we're pretty much in accord on a lot of the stuff, and we're working on something to build, you know, the ranch's legacy for the future. I'm not going to see hardly any of it. Rebuild.
Right.
Yes. I'm see any.
And so
of
I know, and it's not going to be, you know. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean, Lola and I are not going to see any of this. This is something that's going to happen in the next century. You know, I'm going to turn 50. You know, maybe 30 more years on this planet for me.
45.
Yeah, 40. Hey, you know, I could be 106. You know. But there's the other thing that I could possibly die tomorrow. I mean, who knows? But like, I'm not worried about that for me. This is not about me. You know, this is the thing that I'm getting. It's not about me. It's about what the ranch is going to, you know, how the ranch is going to be for the next 100 years. Yep. Period. Nothing.
That's it.
And I want to ask both of you, do you feel, just kind of on the back end of that, do you feel there's extra pressure for Black Americans to honor, where even if the land is not, you know, owned by, you know, because I know there's a lot of families who have this story, of land in their family, but it was lost due to family strife and fighting and whatnot. Do you feel that there's an extra weight to preservation and in preserving the legacy of ancestors as opposed to those who are not of?
I feel like, I believe completely that we are strategically positioned for such a time as this. This timing is something that we did not choose, but we are absolutely on par. And I am completely in tune with my ancestors on a level that is uncommon for most people that I know. And so that is really the driving force here. Really it is. I mean, I commune with them probably better than I do with most of the living relatives, because they are the driver for all of this. And I do mean that in every sense of the word, that they really are. So I give, a lot of credence to that. And that's the catalyst for me. That is it. That's the impetus. They are. Even though we can't see them, some of them we don't even know, but it's very real. It's palpable. It's real.
There's no pressure personally, because this is just part of what, this is part of my life now, is making sure that this ranch is positioned for success and thriving and, a high level prestige, in the future. Like, it's not a thing that I'm having to do. It's a thing that I'm just doing as part of my normal.
We were chosen. Blessed.
We were chosen.
It's a huge deal that they entrust us with this. That's what I keep getting. They entrusted us with this crazy, amazing story. That's high honor. No pressure. I love it. It's my life. It's who we are.
Yeah, it's not pressure for me at all. I mean,
it's our life. This is who we are.
It is pressure.
So it's really awesome. We had one of my colleagues and friends, Dr. Nia Jones, was on with us during a previous coffee talk talking about the call. We were talking about calling forth freedom and, sort of the spiritual dimension of trying to do any work around preservation of historic African-American spaces or places or sites. And very often we hear it, but we don't answer it. And there's a lot of people who want to answer it who are watching right now, who might say, I want to answer it too, but I have these barriers. Maybe I don't know exactly what to do with this land. A lot of people tell us never sell the land. It's going to be the name of my new book. However, a lot of people don't feel equipped. And I want to get a sense from you all in your journey of answering the call. What were the institutions, the groups, the different agencies or resources that you found along the way that supported you in answering the call? Because there's people who want to, and they don't do things because they don't want to, but maybe they just need some inspiration from you all to know who and what came into your path or met you to support you.
Well, one big thing is, this is so funny. I did not know the Texas Freedom Colonies Project existed this time last year, or SACAM, San Antonio African American Community Archive and Museum. So last year in July, my brother was at the airport in San Antonio, and he sees a branding iron exhibit. And so, of course, that means something to us, but most people are like, so what, right? But for us, like, look at this, right? So he sends me a picture, and he says, check this out. I'm like, oh my God, I won't use profanity, but I said something like, holy. Anyway, so at the bottom of the picture, I'm like, who did this? He's like, I don't know. But our brains are incredibly different, couldn't be more different, really. So I'm like, who is that SACAM? What is that? Google it up, right? And then we partnered on a couple of things. Did a virtual discussion with them in December with the Texas Oral History Association. And also we currently at this moment have an exhibit at the First United Bank of Seguin that we partnered with SACAM to do. And we're going to be working on having those panels at some schools and work on the notebook piece and things like that. And so and I have to say that happened in the spirit realm. I'm just being who I am and doing what I'm called to do. And I picked up the baton, and here we are. That happened almost through osmosis, but I know where it comes from. I know how this energy happens. So I would just say to people, one thing people could do, my son, for instance, when he was 9, he would talk to my grandmother and her sister, who are in their 80s, right? And I have his notebook, and it's in pristine condition. He sat with them and just said, well, who are your best friends? Do you have chores? All these wild questions. They sat and answered them. I have it. It's a part of my coffee table book to come. But I'm just saying that there are things that we can do that we don't see sometimes right before us, right? Like talking to people around us, because you don't know who knows what, right?
Yes, yes. So for you, it's every opportunity. Just keep walking through the doors, right?
That's what I'm doing.
You may not get automatically through the first door and get all the information you need, but you keep walking through the door and you look for other people doing the same things or something related, right?
Yes, yeah.
Analyze and pivot accordingly.
That's it. That's
Well,
exactly what we're
say that
doing.
again, because that was a word. Say it.
Collect, analyze, and pivot accordingly.
Well, all right.
That's
That,
what we're doing.
that is what we need to
I could have said it better myself.
That's fantastic.
It's in the bloodline, right?
Yes.
Before we get into because I think our next guest and colleague is going to be here soon, but I just wanted to ask really quick to Lola and Malcolm, what has been the perception of you, because I know you emphasize sharing the story with the younger generation. What's been the perception of the youth in your family to the legacy, and do you see those, you know, those minds turning of those who may be answering the call soon?
Well, you know what? Not yet, but I do believe that we're fertilizing those potential seeds at this point. That's what I see happening. And as I said, we are actively repairing the breach, and so that's part of the work that still has to come to fruition, because we live a very different life than we lived back then. So we have some work to do.
There are a few minds that are getting it, but like Lola said, we're sort of doing the planting. We're in the planting stage at this point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So this has been incredible. I am already thinking about reasons to have you back and talk about the planting, because the key to all of this is intergenerational work, and you have really tapped into people of, frankly, we're in the same generation, you know, Malcolm. And I really, really appreciate you talking about the spiritual process, the calling of being snatched from your life by the ancestors, and listening and hearing it and walking in that spiritual calling. I'm an intellectual and academic, and I'm not on this intellectual path without having answered that calling to walk out of my other professional life into this. So I really appreciate you being so open and honest and transparent. And we're asking everyone to go ahead and share their questions, and we hope you can stick around a little bit longer because we're going to ask you to turn your videos and your cameras off as we go to the next sessions. But everyone, we're going to have a Q&A probably in the last 10 minutes of the show, and hope that at least one of the Moors can stick around for that. Thank you so much.
Sure. Okay. One quick thing too, I think I added a link for the virtual discussion in the chat, so I hope that you're able to tap into that. People can look for the video.
I think I see the link, and we'll definitely get that distributed to our viewers.
Thank you guys so much for having us.
Thank you.
Yes, please go ahead.
It's in the process of being built. It's wilcoxranchjakescolony.org, and I'll post it in the chat. It's in progress. It will be up shortly.
Okay, I'm excited about that.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Stay on with us. Now we got kind of a surprise for everyone. I'm kind of excited. One of my dear friends, colleagues, supporter of Texas Freedom Colonies Project for several years now, Dr. Catherine Holliday, UT Arlington, is going to be a field correspondent right now. And so I'm going to ask Dr. Holliday to join us live. And so let's see if she can do so. I'm looking for her. Yes. All right. So if you are live, if you speak, I think we can make sure that you're somewhat projected on the screen.
All right. Can y'all hear me okay?
We can hear you.
A little bit? Okay. Well, I am out in Moser Valley with my class. And my co-instructors, Dr. Austin Allen and Dr. Diane Allen. And today we are out visiting freedom colonies along the Trinity River in Dallas and Fort Worth. We're joining you from Moser Valley. Let me kind of bring over and get everybody else in the conversation here.
Yeah, it's still, if you might have to speak a little closer to the phone or a little louder, just to make sure everybody hears. It's close. But
Okay.
okay, so can you tell us why Moser Valley? What's Moser Valley?
So Moser Valley is a site on the eastern edge of Fort Worth. And there is a school building that was actually moved off the site and into the city of Euless. And so the community has been trying to get the former site of the school turned into a park. And it's been a long process. There have been conversations about moving the school building back. And so we're here to kind of hear a little bit about the planning process for the new park, as well as plans for that school building. If I come over here, we might be able to show you some of those plans.
Show us more.
I'm interrupting the conversation, everybody. Sorry.
Okay. There is a stellar right over there. It's kind of confusing. That's what it is.
This is our host, Mr. Benny Tucker. You're live.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry. What was your question?
Oh, this is what happens.
Well, no, that's they want to move in here. A lot of these things, like the original school building, they want to move it in here. Someone actually bought the original school building back in the 80s, and they remodeled it and turned it into a hair salon. It's located now in Bedford. So we're trying to get together a team, maybe some UTA students to kind of help us get that school building back up here. What do y'all think about that?
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. So could we hear this gentleman's name again? Can you introduce himself again?
Mr. Tucker.
Community.
Can you introduce yourself? Sorry, you're talking to so many different people.
I'm sorry. I am Benny Tucker. I'm president of the Moser Valley Community Association, and this is our park. And as I had mentioned to students and our guests here, that this park is the very first park that has ever been in this particular community. Moser Valley was at one time the oldest Black community. It's quite integrated right now. It wasn't until 1998 that the community received water and some sewer. All the residents were basically on septic tanks and water wells. So
until 1998, sir?
Groundwater from
the
same ground that your septic system.
Yeah, 1998.
Wow. So you're out there today. If you can just tell us quickly, about the tour and who are the students that are with you today, Dr. Holliday. I hope she can still hear me.
I think we may have lost connection.
We may have lost connection with her. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're going to get more information about this tour and about Moser Valley and make sure we share that gentleman's contact information so we can stay abreast of what's going on in the field. And if you'd like us to come out to your Freedom Colony, or you like to call in, or you want to send us videos, and we can make sure you show up on our website, you show up in our newsletters, all of that, get in contact with us. Let us know. We want to broaden or keep that connection with the field. And as we all are able to recover from COVID, guess what we get to do is be out there in the community with you, which is what we're hoping to do later this summer. So Dr. Holliday, who is at UT Arlington, will also be a guest speaker this fall at Texas A&M, along with other community members from Dallas area Freedom Colonies, and we're excited about that. So we can go on to the rest of our programming. And now we're ready for news and announcements. And we want to start with one special announcement. The next slide. Okay, and Skylar, please, go ahead.
Yes, so we have, as I mentioned at the beginning of the talk, we have a number of events all across Texas that are honoring, and communities that are honoring Juneteenth. and the freedom of Juneteenth. And so we have a couple of special ones here. We have a collaboration here. You see the screenshots of Calaboose Museum's Juneteenth event. They're having their grand reopening there on Saturday. And so they're gonna have a lot of different festivities and activities there. And then also I mentioned the mural dedication and unveiling in Galveston with Sam Collins and some of the other civic organizations down there. And our link, we will be posting this link in the chat and also on our social media social media pages as well. Next, as we touched on, Dr. Roberts will be on the Schomburg stage, and she'll be interviewing so a world-renowned author and the Words Like Freedom event there. And again, I don't want to go over all this information because I want to give you guys a chance to look through it. And then also the IA Symposium, which is a conference dedicated to preserving Texas Freedom Colonies, will be happening later on this summer in July. And we'll again link those registration links as well. We'll be including that on our social media and website.
Both our website and our social media are important to follow, but we have as many ways, we try to get to people. If you just have a question, you get to us by email right away, but we have lots on our Facebook page, lots on our website. I just want to emphasize here that the IA Symposium is co-hosted by Prairie View A&M, and it should be incredible. And you want to make sure that you follow IA Symposium, Texas Purple Hull Pea Festival online. And this Saturday for the Words Like Freedom, it will be Clint Smith, the author of How the Word Is Passed, the #1 nonfiction on the New York bestsellers list. It is New York Times bestsellers list. It's the #1 book, How the Word Is Passed, and I will be facilitating discussion and interview with him. You still have time to register and join us virtually. Please do. Go ahead, Skylar.
And then next, I want to touch on our plans for our strategic planning feedback. We are looking for you to give us your feedback on different projects that we're doing, the Adopt a County, our new website, the Atlas. We want to hear from you.
And
so,
Josh Poe is here to visit with us to talk about that process. He is from Root Cause Research Center. Josh, you want to come on and share with us a little bit about the process?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Roberts. And I just want to say how honored we are to be here and to work on this project. My name is Josh Poe, as Dr. Roberts said, with the Root Cause Research Center, and we're a movement-based organization in Louisville, Kentucky that's focused on solidarity research, data visualization, and tenant organizing. And we've always been really inspired by the Texas Freedom Colonies project, so it was a real honor to work on this. Essentially, what we've been working on over the past 12 months or so is a plan to upgrade the web portal and the Atlas. And this plan is really a guide to create best practices for the website survey and storytelling functions to really accommodate integrated identification, mobile community site assessment, process to spatialization of data, meaning oral histories, photos, etc., and really to enable the mapping of previously unknown communities and cemeteries. And we have integrated feedback up to this point into the strategic plan, but now we're at a place where we're closing out the draft and the process, and we want people to comment on what we've done. And so there are really two ways to submit feedback, and they both involve the YouTube video that we've created. And descendants can either submit comments by watching the video on YouTube and using the Google form that's in the description, or they can link directly to the Google form where the YouTube video is embedded. And both of those mechanisms are going to give us the feedback. We're going to collect that feedback and then make sure that those comments are integrated into the final draft of the plan, and then get that back to Dr. Roberts and her team and go from there.
Yes, we're really excited. It's more than a piece of paper. It's really the path forward to create an online space for descendants to connect with one another, not just when we have coffee talks, but all the time. So we're really excited about creating home pages that you can set up for your particular Freedom Colony, for archiving, for connecting, for announcements. And we just think a lot's going to be possible. A lot of dynamic connection and educational events will be able to happen through this future site. But first, we have to get the plan, and then we have to go to funders. And we'll probably come to some of you to ask for your help as well, because it will take a lot to get this actually built. But we're very close to the finish line, and we're really excited about what we've been able to accomplish so far with Root Cause Research Center, and are looking at by the end of this month completing this plan process with the input and help from you all. But you can still give us input. If you can scroll down, I don't know if we have a link, or if they go to the webpage, if they go to the strategic plan feedback, that's where they should be able to actually go and access the feedback form. If we could go to yes, thank you for the screen sharing, appreciate it. Yes, and so if you click on that, it'll take you to this form. If you'll scroll down, and you can go ahead and fill it in as much as you'd like, to tell us about what you'd like to see, what's missing, all of that. We welcome it, and we'll be collecting that through Juneteenth weekend. Thank you so, so much for sharing that, Valentina. And so if we can go back to our program and go to, I believe we're getting to our last announcements that Assistant Director Natalie will be helping us with. Let's see where we are. Okay, so let's hand it over to Natalie, or I'm sorry, to Jennifer. She wants to talk briefly about the Atlas before we finish up with our announcements.
Sure, good morning, everyone. My name is Jennifer Blanks. I'm a doctoral student here at the Texas Freedom Colonies Project. And I just wanted to let you guys know some exciting announcements and news surrounding the Atlas. One, we do have a new team member working with us on the Atlas. Christian, if you just want to quickly introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Chris. I work on the Atlas with Jennifer. I'm a graduate student in the Master's Urban Planning program, and my job is to make sure the Atlas reflects everything we know about each Freedom Colony as accurately and quickly as possible.
Yeah, so we're really excited to have Christian. So that's the one bit of good news that we have, or exciting news rather. And the second is, if you notice the blue number in the top left corner, it says 380 Freedom Colonies have been located and verified by the Texas Freedom Colonies Project. If you can recall, for a while, our number was 357. So we are excited to see that number increase. So what does that mean? That means that you all are inputting data into the Atlas, and we are verifying it and slowly but surely working our way to fill in the gap on the map. And so we really want to encourage you guys to continue to put the information into the Atlas and explore the new tools on the website, such as this dashboard feature, where you can see just high-level breakdown, the different counties where we have gaps in Freedom Colony research.
Great, thank you.
And
so
then
much.
and then our next announcement that we're excited to share is the Cemetery Registry. We have a grant from the National Trust of Historic Preservation through the African American Fund Cultural Heritage Action Fund grant, and we were able to create the Cemetery Registry. And it's a voluntary database of Black burial grounds in Texas, and you all are encouraged to upload information about the conditions and status of your Black cemetery, but also receive a lot of resources from us regarding how to preserve your African American cemetery in Texas, and a whole list of other sources of information, such as disaster management in your burial ground. And so we're really excited that that's launched and available, and we highly encourage you all to go ahead and fill it out.
Excellent, excellent. And now, Natalie, if you could share with us some ways that people can get involved. Please introduce yourself for those who don't know you already.
Hi, everyone. My name is Natalie Franz. I'm the Assistant Director of the Texas Freedom Colonies Project, and I'm here to share some additional ways you can get involved with the project. You've already heard about adding to the Atlas. You've already heard about the new Cemetery Registry. If you're on our newsletter list, you may have noticed that we have a new monthly newsletter that just went out a little bit ago. If you haven't seen it yet, you can visit our website at the TexasFreedomColoniesProject.com to sign up for the newsletter, and you can view the most recent issue. One of the things that we'll be doing with each newsletter every month is featuring a Freedom Colony. If you'd like to share your story of your Freedom Colony, we'd love to feature it. So please get in touch with us. Our email address for this and any other concerns is freedomcoloniesproject@gmail.com. We love to hear from you. And on the next slide is another initiative that we've been working on with the Bullock Museum. If you have a object, perhaps like the branding irons that Lola and Malcolm were talking about, or any other paper ephemera and objects that mean something to you, we encourage you to share your photos and tell your story of that for the Freedom Colonies. That will be part of an online exhibit with the Bullock Museum and will eventually become part of our project. So we encourage you to submit in that avenue as well. And then the next slide after that is Adopt a County, where I will throw to Skylar to talk a little more about, but we have some really exciting things going on with our Adopt a County program.
Thank you, Natalie. Yes, one of those exciting things, as those who attended the workshop, our last workshop, we introduced our intranet, Adopt a County intranet. So that is really picking up speed. We are working on getting folks access to that and getting information and different pictures and things uploaded to that.
What's the intranet? Why do I care about an intranet? Help me out.
The intranet, that is going to be the home base for your Adopt a County region group as you do meetups and things, as we'll be providing more information throughout the summer about different Q&As and different events that we'll be hosting in regards to Adopt a County. But after you meet with volunteers or you collaborate with volunteers, this is the home where your information for your specified Freedom Colonies and county will live. This is where you store the research materials, upload, and then also connect with other volunteers. And then this summer, we are also very much working on supporting our volunteers that have already signed up, which is well over 30 folks, supporting them in meetings and the goals that we set at the previous workshop. So please be on the lookout for emails from the team and from the Adopt a County team, and we'll be getting that to everybody soon. There is still time, if we'll advance the slide, to sign up. If you are not officially signed up as a volunteer for Adopt a County, you can do it right now. You just pull out your phone and hover over, point your camera at this QR code, and you can hover over the QR code. A link will pop up at the top of your phone. Click that and you'll fill out that form, and we'll get you signed up into your, get your login information and everything so you can start uploading. So please be on the lookout for communications for us. Next slide. As Natalie mentioned, any inquiries, questions that you have, please feel free to email us at freedomcoloniesproject@gmail.com, and we'll definitely process that and get back to you. And then there's a lot of ways that you can stay connected with us. We've mentioned social media today, our Facebook, Instagram. We have a list of resources and videos on YouTube that you can check out that will help you to operate the Atlas and some of our new features. But please follow us and join the community. Dr. Roberts?
Yes, I want to thank everyone, including all of my team members. Texas Freedom Colonies Project is a project. And without my team members, including our newest team member, Joshua Brown. Joshua, you want to wave at everyone? Nothing we do is possible. Joshua Brown is, introduce yourself really quickly, Joshua, please.
Hello, everyone. I am a second-year Master's of Architecture student and recently joined the Texas Freedom Colonies Project, and I'm very excited to be here.
And he'll be helping with a lot of our projects in Brenham and Washington County. And so we invite you again, please join our project. And what joining means is not only just volunteering, but telling us what you think is important, telling us about your priorities, telling us what's going on the ground out there. Because we're here as a research backbone for all things Texas Freedom Colonies in the state. There are fantastic efforts going on from the Freedom Conservancy in Freedmanstown in Houston to Independence Heights to Moser Valley in Dallas, to Seguin, to San Antonio, there is a movement afoot to make sure freedom colonies are not only forgotten, but that at the center of the future of this state and of this nation. And you can be part of it. And if you're already part of it, let us know what you're doing so we can support you. Because we're here, again, we're the research backbone. We are the Texas's central repository of information about historic African-American settlements. We're so grateful for you spending your morning and afternoon with us. And we are excited to spend the next few minutes answering some of your questions. And so I'm going to ask Joshua and Natalie to take a look at our Q&A.
I think Jennifer has actually the
Jennifer has it? Okay, fantastic. So Jennifer, if you could read the question, and then we'll be happy to go through and answer those. And then we'll move on to whatever questions other guests have.
Sure. So our first question comes from Becky. She says the statistics of land ownership is going from 2% to 30%, but back down to 2%. It is that current 2%, including all land ownership, single family homes, etc., or is there a minimum acreage threshold for the purposes of this discussion?
So I want to punt this to Erica first, and then I can follow up, but I don't know. Erica, you want to take a stab at it?
Sure. So in my research, I focused primarily on Black farmland. So what I'm looking at is statistics from the USDA census. And if you caught it, it was really quick in that video we watched. There's a lot of problems with the USDA census. They've been historically undercounting farmers, and then they changed what the definition is to be a Black farmer and how they count it. And so when I say that Black land loss has, or that Black farm ownership has shrunk to under 2%, I'm talking about Black farms.
So yes, that was going to be the same thing that I said, because nationally it's somewhere between 1.7 and 2%.
Right.
Yeah.
And
but
so
there's problems with that number.
Yes, and the question itself really highlights one of the root issues, which is that this is a woefully understudied area. We don't understand a lot about what happened. First of all, we, as I highlighted before, we've told each other this myth, right, about 40 acres and a mule and the Reconstruction and what we thought that it did. And then we told ourselves a myth about why Black farmers stopped farming and why they moved north, and we've left out of the picture until very recently the violence and the outright theft that was involved with the land. And so that's one of the things that's really exciting, I think, about Professor Mitchell's work, is that what he's trying to do is put together a team to start looking at what empirically is causing the land loss. So we know these like broad strokes, right? But for example, with heirs property, it's a great change in the state property law, which he wrote, that Uniform Heirs Property Act, and it's important changes that need to be made. But can we really say this is a solution to Black land loss when we can't account for how much heirs property is a part of the problem? So what we need really are teams of researchers and attorneys looking at these cases, looking at land records, looking at how it happened, and then that feeds into the whole reparations conversation.
Awesome.
So there's just, I know I went on and on.
No, you did not go on and on. You answered the question great.
It's not a good answer because there aren't good answers to these questions. It's our job, I think, to find the answers now.
Yes, and it takes teams and people from every discipline, right? So,
okay.
Next question.
Thank you for the answer to the question, Erica. And so our next question is from Ashley Cleveland. She asks, how can city planners, especially Black ones, help to answer the call of land reparations?
So that's a really interesting question, the call of land reparations. I think that there's a broader way to think about this in terms of what's called restorative justice. And there is such a legacy of, again, theft, dispossession, legal subterfuge, in which governments were complicit. We see everything from the bombing of African-American communities to the fire and, destruction of Rosewood, Florida. So, we've got this long history, and then you bring it to the present and it turns into freeways that are bifurcated Austin and that have bifurcated, Syracuse. And so the span of when we talk about repair, let's break down the word reparations. We talk about what it is to repair, requires a few different steps. So as a planner, you can create spaces and moments which facilitate education. And then the next step after education is to facilitate a reckoning with the implications of what you've learned. So sometimes we do an education and we acknowledge and we memorialize and we think we are finished. What planners have an opportunity to do is to use planning processes strategically to facilitate education, which progresses then into the reckoning with the implications, and then produce spaces and moments in which the implications can be addressed specifically. For example, comprehensive planning projects, comprehensive planning that happens on a city level, comprehensive planning that happens on a regional level with disaster recovery and funding and allocation. Processes that have to do with the Planning Commission, processes that have to do with the review and possible approval of demolition permits, which often occur during historic landmark commission meetings. So the point is that planners who show up in all types of planning processes already, all of which I've named, can use those for education, reckoning with the implications, and then deciding or finding strategic ways for finding ways that what we decide today can both address what has been wrong and prevent it from going forward in the future in the processes we have now, rather than just memorializing and say this bad thing happened and I'm sorry. Guilt isn't justice. Reckoning, facing what has happened and reckoning with the implications and deciding repair and repentance is to face what you've done wrong and to not do it again. Repentance is to not do it again. And so when we think of our role as planners, how are we facilitating both an emotional and social repentance, as well as a repentance in our procedural processes? That's procedural justice. Who has access, who knows? So there's all these different ways in what we do every day as planners, planning educators, planning adjacent workers, that we can infiltrate this way of thinking about what we're doing. And it's not just Afrocentric in terms of repentance and atoning for what has been done to the ancestors. It's also a Native American principle of what is this going to mean 7 generations hence? Whatever we do, 7 generations hence, what does it mean? So it's about that forward thinking. We call it sustainability now, but it predates, this has been part of different Native American planning for hundreds of years, right? So these are the principles that we need to return to and that we need to inculcate in the way we do planning.
Well answered, Dr. Roberts. And so we have one more question. It's from Becky St. John again. She says, I'm excited to hear about the Moser Valley project. Which school district is the proposed park in?
Ooh, that is a very good question. I think what I'd like to do to answer that is, Natalie, could you please sequester that question and send it to a follow-up email to Dr. Holliday?
Yes, I will.
And ask her that question, and then we will try to get sort of a Moser Valley update and get that information posted to our website or to our Facebook page. But Moser Valley is in the Dallas region, Dallas area. we actually have a Dallas Freedom Colonies on our, so two things. On our atlas, you can find Moser Valley. It is there. So you can see where it's located on the atlas. So that's step one. Number two, we have digital humanities sites, websites that our students made. One of which is dedicated to Dallas Freedom Colonies. And one of the featured Freedom Colonies in this exhibit, our online exhibit on Dallas Freedom Colonies, is Moser Valley. And so you can learn a little bit more there by looking at those particular exhibits. And I think she's going to try to navigate to maybe those exhibits now. I don't know if it's under the Atlas tab or not. But because yes, it's on the Atlas and it's also great. And someone has shared that link as well.
It's shared in the chat for a direct link.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Let me pull that up. One of the things that our students often do as part of their classwork is develop exhibits. If you want to, let's see if I can share it really quickly. And here we go. Does everyone see Dallas Area Freedom Colonies? Does everybody see that on my screen?
Mm-hmm.
On the screen? Okay.
Yes.
So this is that exhibit by Miss Felicity Owens, who actually works in preservation in Tulsa, Oklahoma. She's one of my former students and advisees. And for some reason, it's asking to sign in, which is odd. It's usually not the case.
I was getting the same.
Okay, that's odd.
A question for IT, perhaps.
Yes, a question for IT. So someone says, not certain, but I thought I said Moser Valley is near Euless, Texas. Yes, so when I say Dallas area, I'm talking about Dallas County. So it should be in the Dallas County.
I think Catherine, she mentioned, Dr. Holliday mentioned it was on the outer parts of Frisco. So I'm imagining that it's going to be in Frisco ISD area. But don't quote us on that. We'll definitely get that verified. But I do remember her mentioning Frisco area. But that Frisco and Plano ISD kind of gets a little tricky.
Yeah, and so as you can see here, we have some highlighted settlements. Does everybody see my Dallas area map here?
Yes.
Okay, so you can see some of, she featured some settlements in this, and this is a video, a oral history on Moser Valley and background video and information. A little bit more if you're wanting to learn about it. And there is information about the park here. So this is the Moser Valley Park on the former site of Moser Valley School. So you can learn a little bit more about that here if you want to dig deeper. But this is just an overall great introduction to some of the freedom colonies in the Dallas region. All right, and if you would like us to, we're here to, at least for the next 10 minutes, whoever wants to, we are happy to answer more of your questions or have discussion. And I know Malcolm Moore is still here, and I really appreciate him sticking around a little longer. Erica is still here, and I really appreciate that. So if you have a question, we'd ask you that you use the raise hand function so we can acknowledge you, and we'd love to hear from you if you have any comments or questions. Again, you should put the questions in the Q&A. You put them in the chat, that's fine. We're here to listen and to talk. Anybody else have other comments? I know that some of you, one of you earlier mentioned that you met me at some event in Edenville, I think.
It looks like we have another question.
Oh, great.
Karine participated in the Freedom Colonies program with you in Edenville, Florida, and Independence Heights, Texas, through the Texas Southern University. And
yeah,
they say that it was great to learn more on the topic, and they're grateful that you continue in the research. And I'm just going to give a shout out to some of the people who commented here. Michelle Thompson is watching us from Olympia, Washington. They're in the Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation. We have Dr. Monique Willis in Houston, Texas. But we'll be working in restoring and repurposing Black family-owned land in Burleson County, Texas. We have Teresa Fontado, Executive Editor of KUT in Austin. Yeah, we have a lot of people joining us from different places. Connie Ward from Jonesboro, Georgia. She's a descendant of people from the colony of Terryville near Gonzales, Texas.
Awesome. Oh, yes. I've heard a lot about Terryville. Excellent. Yeah, Terryville is important. There's Miss Gloria Gordon is a county historical commission leader down there doing some fantastic work, and we're trying to promote more of that. And we have an Adopt a County group for Gonzales County. So if you're not already part of Gonzales County's Adopt a County group, we welcome you to join, and you can meet up with others who are researching Gonzales County. And we really encourage you to do that and meet more people who are working on that.
Roderick Bowser mentions that he's had this very situation along with possibly hundreds of co-heirs where the deed is commonly believed and frequently reported to be lost. Thanks to public records search being available over the internet, the deed has been recently found. So if anybody listening today has a situation similar to this, we share in our website in the Blackland Resources page the link in which you can look up your deed and see if somebody, or the deed of any land, and see if somebody has previously owned the land, who has owned the land, or if you have any rights to the land, that if it's documented there. And Erica can talk about this if she wants to pop in.
And we do have a question in the chat from Roderick Bowser. He says, in Austin, we have traditionally Black neighborhoods undergoing displacement. The common argument on Reddit is against the establishment of historical districts in these neighborhoods is that only the current gentrifiers would benefit. How does one encounter that historical districts are necessary for the protection of the remaining Black residents?
That has always been an issue. I was on the City of Austin Landmark Commission. And here's what I'll tell you about historic Black districts. In the short term, that is right now, what would come before us, I'll give you a concrete example, is a community in which, let's say, I can't remember the name of it right now, but there's one founded in 1941, 1942. It was a historic Black community of one of the earliest suburbs in Austin. And there was a lot of integrity to those buildings associated with the period of historical significance. And there would be one or two people saying, you know what, I just want to knock down 2 of these so I can put my McMansion on it. What's the problem? You want us to move into the inner core? You know, we're urban pioneers, and, you know, sustainability, walkability, all of that. And who would be there as a counter to say, no, don't do that? No one. Sometimes there would be someone from Austin's Historical Society. Sometimes we have cultural resource surveys conducted by people who contracted by the City of Austin, like Henry Hecken Moore, and we have these East Austin surveys, etc. But what happens when you have a district is you have a documented protected area where you're not just going to get your permit release to demolish just like that. Your historic district is one of the best ways to protect or slow down the likelihood of demolition. So there's that. There's just stop them from tearing it down so that they can then put things on top of it that will then do what? Cause the tax base or the taxes to increase, right? So if you look at it like that ripple effect, then you're like, oh, well, gentrification is going to happen the more that people are destroying or knocking down these houses so that they can take up 2 lots and put on one of their dwell houses on top of it. So if you can do something that protects a community, then you're stopping the baseline, right? So first, let's save the fabric we have. There are in Austin other ways to freeze taxes. I think there's a lot more education that needs to happen around what's available to homeowners to freeze their taxes. And there's a new law, which I'm not remembering, but I know we advertised some time past, a few months ago. Heather Way at University of Texas at Austin Law School help create some legislation where they can slow down the sale of properties with tax liens till they can find heirs. So if you have, arrears and taxes, it kind of slows it down. All that being said, districts, most of our districts are actually white. And so the correlation between the increase in gentrification and Black districts has never been conclusively documented en masse. There's not a comprehensive study that says, and this has been going on from Austin, I know, since 2003, 2005, the same people have been coming forth and saying, preservation equals gentrification. Well, in a lot of these places, yes, it makes it harder to get in because of people are moving there because of the architecture and to keep their tax base, all these things. But there are too many African-American communities that aren't even protected in the first place. So we need to get there before we can even really talk about it causing gentrification. If there is anyone else here who wants to speak to that, well, yes, Clarksville. Here's the deal with Clarksville. Two things happened with Clarksville. One was freeway project, right? And then there was the process of gentrification that happened as a consequence of, I would say, more people moving into the inner core, all of that. But there are so many parts that are Clarksville that weren't even included on that district. So it depends who's involved, how the surveying is done, who is consulting, and on what basis. So there's a lot of ways to do this that we're not really talking through with people. It's staying in the hands of experts rather than it being a community-based event. And that's part of why we do the Atlas, so that we can start to kind of populate these places and communities that were freestanding communities even before they were neighborhoods, right? So in other words, visibility is important and strategic. And districts help with that kind of strategic visibility. Okay. Any other, looking here, hi Gloria. I'm not sure if we answer your question about, yes, we can check. Gloria, if you want to send us a follow-up message, we can see what we can do about AYA Symposium attendance. Just remind us. And then Mr. Nelson, Timothy Nelson, I see at Blackton, New Mexico, currently Roswell Correctional Facility.
Timothy had inquired about being able to share some of these resources there. And he was clarifying what Blackton was. I don't know that they have internet access there, so we may have to get creative with ways we can share some of this information.
Yes. So it was a historic freedom colony in Chavez County, New Mexico. So it is actually recognized as part of the U.S. National Park Service. And so this is a place, I'm actually going to share my screen on this to make sure people see this. All right, so here we are at the National Park Service website. This is Homestead National Historical Park for Blackton, New Mexico. Has a historical marker. This was founded, it was incorporated rather, in 1903, and it's 15 miles south of Roswell. So it is a park. It is recognized, and there's a lot of people who are documenting homesteading of freedom colonies in the West. The important difference with Texas to understand is while in 1860 there was this Homestead Act, in the state of Texas, the Homestead Act was 1866, and even thereafter, there were black codes in that's what they were called, black codes in the state legislation that basically barred the distribution of publicly available land to African Americans. Thus, African Americans were relegated to settling or adverse possession on land that nobody else wanted, that was already taken by virtue of whites having first pick. And so why is it that so many freedom colonies are in bottomland or places other places people don't want to be, or not the best quality land, or places susceptible to flooding? The systemic racism after emancipation of not having access to the homesteading. We have this glorified idea of the homesteading process of, oh, everybody was able to go and homestead. Not the case in Texas in the same way. Okay.
It looks like Erica has her hand up.
Yes,
so Erica,
please.
Sure, just really quickly, I wanted to address Mr. Bowser's comment about this common problem of having lost a deed. And so if it wasn't clear during our interview, I want to make sure that folks know a realtor will charge you, or a real estate agent will charge you like $100 to $200 to do a title search, but you can find out if you have clouded title or cleared title. Just about every single county in Texas has an online database that is searchable for free. So if you just Google the name of your county, and it's either through the tax assessor collector's website or through the county courthouse or county clerk.
Thank you so much for that. We are really, really privileged to have you, Erica, as a guest today. I'm really, really thankful for what you've been able to share, Elizabeth McDonald, Esquire. So excited to get to call you that, longtime friend of more than 20 years now. So thank you.
But I'm laughing, and the privilege is mine. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, awesome. So with that, we want to thank all of you who've managed to stick around for another 16 minutes. We really, really thank you for that. Or rather 16 people managed to stay on for another 20 minutes past the end of our program and talk to us and visit with us. Enjoy your Juneteenth. Visit our Juneteenth link page of events. Follow us. Use that email and keep in communication. You should receive, again, we'll have a monthly newsletter go out soon for July early as a sort of update. Interim, or we'll have it sometime in July, but all of our programming is going to take, most of it will take a pause for July, and we'll return later in August to do some in-person events in communities and have a schedule for you. But for most of July, we are going to take a pause from our public-facing work and regroup and get some exciting things ready for you in the late summer and fall. So thank you, thank you. And yes, Senate approved the Juneteenth holiday. Now it's got to go to the House, and we assume that it will pass the House. So we're very, very excited about that. Thank you again for staying all this time with us this morning. We really enjoyed you. And happy Juneteenth, everyone. Thank you.